Just to start with, two small comments. Just also on the program, apart from the fact that I have a different surname, it's Rodriguez. On the program, it shows up as SOS Racismo, which is the Spanish anti-racist organization. I'm not part of this organization, or I do not represent it. I've been proposed by this organization, but I work as a policy advisor for the Spanish left, for Izquierda Unida in the European Parliament. So that's why I'm going to speak a bit about the processes that are right now going on a European level, of which we are extremely critical because we really feel that they're driven by a completely erroneous way of understanding migration, and we're fighting against them together with a lot of social movements all around the continent. And I think it's important that we know them in detail and we can analyze them in order to fight them and to fight this racist policy that is being implemented. Very quick. Okay. Okay. And so I'll just give you a few points, and then it's better that we can speak, and there's a bit of a dialogue. When we speak about undocumented migrants, we have to be very aware that this is happening because there is a decision. It's not a natural phenomenon, it's not something that happens per se, but there's a conscious decision of the EU government, the governments of different states, the state as an institution, to maintain people in this situation of insecurity, of precariousness, of vulnerability. And it's a political reason, there's a political conditionality. I want to highlight a fact that maybe you're not aware of, but last year, while 6,000 people were condemned to dying in the Mediterranean Sea because of a political decision, over 2 million people entered the EU legally, safely, obtained normal residence papers, and were able to have a migration process in safe conditions. This is a political reason, and this is a political decision, right? I think we can all understand that. And the EU and its member states use migration as an instrument to favor their governments they have friendly relations with, or the opposite, or for their international political gains. For example, it's not casual also that the nationality that receives more asylum in Spain is people coming from Venezuela, which is a country with which there's a big, well, it's important for the geostrategic goals of the EU. But from other countries, people are just ignored, right? I think we have to be aware of that. And the goal of this is to, or like what we have to be aware of is to denounce a policy that is racist, in the sense that also we have a series of governments that, given the rise of the far right on a European level, have started to implement similar policies to present themselves as having a hard line on migration, but are implementing similar policies. So we have the far right policies being implemented by mainstream parties, and that's obviously extremely problematic. On a European level, apart from certain selected countries with which we have agreements which allow safe and legal migration, like Ukraine, for example, or other countries of our vicinity, for the rest, especially focusing mostly on Africa and the Middle East, the policy is based on only reducing as much as possible the possibilities of legal migration and imposing a model based on asylum only. Before, there was different ways to access Europe and start a life here. Now the only way to do so is going to be asylum, and through a very reduced quotas of asylum. Quotas of asylum are to be imposed, and they're much more reduced. And other ways, other avenues of access to Europe, which used to be part of one of the different options, are now being limited. For example, in these asylum quotas that I'm speaking about, it will be included family reunification, which is terrible, because until now it was a safe way, and it was quite a used way. Up to a third, or more than a third actually, of people living in the EU were coming through family reunification, and now it's going to be part of some already very small quotas, according to what is being debated on an EU level now. And then, I'm sorry, I'm taking more time than expected. Just to finish with the last little bit that was in the introductions, what respect for human rights in detention centres? Well, zero, unhappily. Very little respect for human rights. I would recommend you to have a look, if you don't know them, the reports that the Fundamental Rights Agency of the EU is elaborating, which is one of the few good institutions that the EU has, the Fundamental Rights Agencies, and they have very good reports in which they document these violations of human rights in detention centres, and it's terrible, it's a scandal. But I'm sorry to be bringing all these bad news, but the model is getting worse and worse, because we're going towards what we call the externalization of the European borders. So the selection, I'm sorry, but this is the vocabulary they use, the selection is going to take place outside the European Union. So there will be detention centres in third countries for people trying to come to the European Union. This is the model we're already seeing, for example, in Turkey, and we're seeing how terrible it is. It's a violation of human rights. It's also taking these places away from the public eye, from public scrutiny, from the work of organizations like the ones you represent, which can monitor and can denounce these human rights violations. So they're taking it away into third countries with less guarantees of human rights respect, and they're being, and from there, well, we have no capacity to monitor. It's a very opaque model, because also, like, even for us working for European institutions, it's difficult to access these centres. And for example, in the case of Libya, we have reports documenting terrible situations of human rights violations, and these are centres funded by the European Union, in which we're talking about slavery, we're talking about torture, we're talking about all kinds of things. So I've exposed as quickly as I've been able to the situation and what model is the European Union going towards, and now when we start a dialogue, it would be good that we speak about how we can coordinate our work and to try to fight against this fortress Europe. Thank you.